When Pentagon Secretary Rachel Morrison is ordered to investigate a security breach, she never expected her past as Delta Force's first female operator would come back to haunt her. But the mission takes a shocking turn when she discovers the conspiracy goes deeper than anyone imagined, straight to the heart of a Cold War nuclear program called Coldfire. Forced to team up with Colonel Ethan Cross, a former Navy SEAL with secrets of his own, Rachel must confront the Russian spy who once held her captive, a betrayed general seeking revenge, and the father she thought died 18 years ago. As Rachel races against time to prevent World War III, she'll learn that the deadliest weapons aren't nuclear missiles. They're the ghosts we carry from our past. From classified Pentagon corridors to frozen Alaskan black sites, from the deserts of Nevada to the final showdown that will change everything. This is a story of sacrifice, redemption, and one woman's fight to prove that warriors aren't defined by how many they kill, but by how many they save. Will Rachel choose duty over family? Can she trust the man fighting beside her? And when the countdown begins, who will make the ultimate sacrifice? This is Raven's Ghost Protocol. If you love military thrillers with strong female leads, Cold War conspiracies, and heart-pounding action, you won't want to miss a single moment. Like this video if you're ready for an epic spy thriller. Subscribe for more intense military stories. Comment below. What would you do if you discovered your father had been alive all along? Let's begin. Dad, you're alive. Female Delta Force faces Cold War. Ghosts and nuclear conspiracy truth. Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2019. The night tasted like dust and diesel fuel. Lieutenant Rachel Morrison crouched behind a mud wall, her M4 carbine pressed against her shoulder, watching 3 Taliban fighters drag an American pilot toward a cave entrance 200 meters away. The pilot's flight suit was torn, blood streaming down his face. He wasn't walking. They were dragging him. Rachel's radio crackled, male voice calm despite the circumstances. Raven, we have negative on air support. Sandstorms grounding everything within 50 clicks. You are alone on this. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. She'd been alone before. 22 years old, 5'7", 130 pounds soaking wet. The only woman to ever pass Delta Force selection. And right now, the only thing standing between that pilot and a videotaped execution that would play on every news channel by morning. Rachel checked her magazine. 18 rounds. She had 4 more mags on her vest. 90 rounds total against an estimated 15 to 20 hostiles in that cave complex. The math wasn't good. She moved anyway. Silent, low, using the terrain like she'd been taught. Like she'd practiced 10,000 times until her body knew the movements better than her mind did. Across open ground, into shadow, behind a burnout technical truck. Closer. The Taliban fighters disappeared into the cave mouth. Rachel counted to 30, then followed. Inside the cave narrowed into a tunnel. Voices echoed from deeper in. Pashto, arguing about something. She moved toward the sound, her boots making no noise on the packed earth floor. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Firelight flickered against stone walls. Rachel dropped to a knee assessed. 5 fighters visible. 3 more likely in the adjoining chamber based on the voices. The pilot was zip-tied to a support beam, head hanging. Still breathing. That was something. Rachel didn't hesitate. 2 suppressed shots. The first fighter dropped before his brain registered the impact. The second spun trying to bring his AK up. Too slow. Rachel's third shot caught him in the throat. Then chaos. Muzzle flashes in this darkness. The crack of unsuppressed AK fire in confined space. Rachel moved like water, like smoke. Like something that couldn't be pinned down. She dropped 2 more fighters before they even saw her. The 5th managed to get a burst off that tore chunks from the cave wall near her head. Rachel put 2 in his chest, 1 in his head. Center mass then confirmed, just like training. The 3 from the adjoining chamber came running. Rachel was already moving to new cover, reloading in motion. First fighter through the doorway took a round in the face. Second got smart, stayed in the doorway, used the frame for cover. Stalemate for 3 seconds. Rachel pulled a flashbang from her vest, cooked it for 2 seconds, threw it high to bounce off the ceiling into the adjoining chamber. The bang in that enclosed space was apocalyptic. She rushed the doorway before the echo faded. The second fighter was on his knees, hands over his ears, disoriented. Rachel kicked his weapon away, put him down with a single shot. The third was still on his feet, firing blind. His rounds went wide. Hers didn't. Silence. Smoke. The metallic smell of blood and cordite. Rachel cleared the rest of the cave complex. Empty. She cut the pilot loose. "Can you walk?" He nodded, couldn't speak, probably couldn't hear either after that flashbang. Rachel half carried him out of the cave and into the night. 2 clicks to the extraction point. They made it in 28 minutes. The MH-60 Blackhawk came in low and fast rotors, beating the air into submission. As they lifted off, Rachel looked down at the cave entrance. 8 men dead, 1 American saved. The math had worked out after all. The crew chief handed her a bottle of water. She drank, then closed her eyes. Just another night in the war that never seemed to end. Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia, present day. The fluorescent lights in the Pentagon basement hummed like insects trapped in glass. Rachel Morrison sat in a cubicle barely larger than a coffin, surrounded by filing cabinets that probably hadn't been opened since the Cold War ended. Her desk was clean, a computer monitor, a keyboard, a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Secretary." She looked the part, glasses with thick black frames, hair pulled back in a tight bun, navy blue cardigan over a white blouse, sensible shoes, the kind of woman you'd pass in the hallway and forget before you reach the elevator. That was the point. Rachel Morrison, Administrative Assistant to the Department of Defense Logistics Division, GS-7 pay grade, 32 years old. No husband, no children, no ambitions beyond making sure the right forms got filed in the right folders. At least that's what her personnel file said. The woman who sat in that cubicle was someone else entirely. Her real name was still Rachel Morrison, but the rest was carefully constructed fiction. The glasses were non-prescription. The cardigan hid a body that could do 50 pull-ups without breaking a sweat, and the sensible shoes had reinforced toes suitable for breaking kneecaps if the situation required. Rachel Morrison, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army Delta Force, retired. Though retired was a generous term for what had actually happened. 3 years ago, the Defense Intelligence Agency had approached her with a proposal. They needed someone inside the Pentagon, someone invisible, someone who could blend into the bureaucratic machinery while hunting for threats that regular security couldn't detect. Someone exactly like her. The deal was simple. She'd take a cover position, pretend to be a nobody. In exchange, she'd have access to intelligence networks that didn't officially exist and authorization to do things that were definitely not in any manual. Her handler used the codename Hawk. She'd never met him in person. All communication came through encrypted messages and the occasional phone call. That's how she'd gotten her current assignment. Find the leak. Someone in the Pentagon was selling classified information, not just any information. Operation Coldfire, a program so secret that most generals didn't know it existed. A Cold War relic that was supposed to have been dismantled in 1991, except it hadn't been dismantled. Coldfire was still active, still operational, and someone was trying to sell its secrets to the highest bidder. Rachel's computer pinged. New email from an address that didn't exist in any directory. She opened it. 3 names, 3 suspects. One of them was the leak. General Richard Kessler, 68 years old, Vietnam veteran, spent 3 years as a POW, one of the most decorated officers in the Army, currently serving as senior advisor to the Joint Chiefs. Dr. Viktor Petrov, 55 years old, Russian emigre who defected in 1997, nuclear physicist, some naturalized American citizen, worked on nuclear treaty verification for the State Department. Colonel Ethan Cross, 45 years old, Navy SEAL retired, 23 years of service, Bin Laden raid veteran, just transferred to the Pentagon 3 weeks ago to head strategic operations. 3 names, 3 very different profiles, 1 traitor. Rachel memorized the files, then deleted the email. It would erase itself from the server in 60 seconds anyway. That's how Hawk operated. No traces, no evidence, just ghosts chasing ghosts. She stood, smoothed her cardigan, and headed for the elevator. Time to become invisible again. The Strategic Operations Office was on the 3rd floor E-ring. The good real estate, where the brass lived. Rachel had a legitimate reason to be there. She was delivering a logistics report that didn't actually exist, but looked convincing enough if anyone bothered to check. No one ever checked. She walked past offices full of people making decisions that would reshape the world. Wars started and ended in these hallways. Empires rose and fell based on conversations held behind these doors. And none of them even noticed the secretary walking by. Rachel paused outside Colonel Cross's office. The door was open. She could see him inside, sitting at his desk, reading something on his computer screen. He looked exactly like his file photo. 6'2", broad shoulders. The kind of build that came from decades of physical training, not gym memberships. Short, dark hair going gray at the temples. Square jaw. eyes that looked like they'd seen things most people couldn't imagine. Navy SEAL, Team 6, the tip of the spear, and possibly a traitor. Rachel knocked on the doorframe. Colonel Cross, I have the logistics report you requested. He looked up, met her eyes. For just a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Recognition, evaluation, she couldn't tell. Then he smiled, professional, distant. Thank you, Miss Morrison, Rachel Morrison. Thank you, Miss Morrison. Just leave it on the desk. She set the folder down, started to leave. Miss Morrison, she turned. Sir, have we met before? You look familiar. Rachel's heart rate didn't change. Her breathing stayed steady. Years of training took over. I don't think so, sir. I'd remember. He studied her for another moment, then nodded. My mistake. Thank you for the report. Rachel left the office, walked calmly to the elevator, rode it down to the basement. Only when she was back in her cubicle did she let herself process what had just happened. He'd recognized her. Not her face, he couldn't have. She'd been careful about that. The hair was different. The glasses, the posture, everything about her current appearance was designed to be forgettable. But he'd recognized something, the way she moved maybe, the way she'd assessed the room before entering. Little things, operator things, things that civilians didn't do but soldiers did without thinking. Ethan Cross had been an operator for 23 years. He knew how to read people, and he'd read her. This was going to be complicated. That night, Rachel broke into General Kessler's office. The Pentagon after hours was a different place. The daytime chaos gave way to hollow silence. Security made regular rounds, but Rachel had memorized their patterns. She had 17 minutes between patrols on the second floor C ring. More than enough time. Kessler's office was locked, but locks were just puzzles. Rachel had the door open in 45 seconds. She slipped inside, closed it behind her, and turned on a small red lens flashlight. The office was exactly what you'd expect from a general who'd served for 46 years. Flags, medals, photos with presidents, a bronze star in a frame on the wall, Purple Heart, Silver Star. The furniture was government issue but well-maintained. Rachel moved to the desk, rifled through papers. Most of it was routine. Budget proposals, personnel evaluations, briefings on readiness levels for various units. Then she found something interesting. A folder tucked into the bottom drawer. No label. Inside were printouts of emails. Encrypted emails that had been decoded. Rachel recognized the encryption protocol. It was old. Soviet era. KGB used it during the Cold War. The emails were in Russian. Rachel read Russian fluently. She learned it during 2 years of hell she tried very hard not to think about. The emails were short, cryptic, but clear enough. Someone wanted information about Coldfire. Someone was willing to pay $50 million for the complete data package. And someone was negotiating the deal. The last email was dated 3 days ago. It gave a meeting location, a restaurant in Georgetown. Tomorrow night at 8. Rachel photographed everything with a camera, no bigger than a button, then put the folder back exactly as she'd found it. She was halfway to the door when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Not the security patrol. Wrong timing. Wrong rhythm. Someone else was here. Rachel killed her flashlight and moved behind the door, pressing herself against the wall. The footsteps stopped outside the office. She heard the sound of a key in the lock. The door opened. A man stepped inside, tall, military bearing. He didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he pulled out a flashlight of his own and went straight to the desk. Rachel watched him open the same drawer she'd just searched, pull out the same folder, photograph the same emails. Then he closed the drawer, turned to leave, and found Rachel standing between him and the door. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then Colonel Ethan Cross said very quietly, "Hello, Raven." Her call sign, her Delta Force call sign, the name only a handful of people in the world knew. Rachel's hand moved to the knife on her belt. "How do you know that name?" Ethan didn't reach for a weapon. He just stood there, studying her with those eyes that had seen too much. "Because I was your instructor, Fort Bragg, 2016, Delta Force selection. You were the first woman to pass. I trained you for 6 months." Rachel's memory flashed back. 9 years ago, a different person, a younger person. Brutal training that pushed her past every limit she thought she had. And an instructor named Cross who'd been harder on her than anyone else because he knew the world would be harder still. "You didn't recognize me," she said. It wasn't a question. "I did, this afternoon. Took me a few hours to place where I knew you from. Then I remembered." He paused. "What are you doing here, Lieutenant Colonel?" "I could ask you the same thing, Colonel." "I'm investigating a security breach." "So am I." They stared at each other. Ethan spoke first. Who's your handler? Classified. Mine is CIA, Directorate of Operations. They think there's a traitor in the Pentagon selling Cold War secrets. Sent me undercover to find them. Rachel processed that. If he was telling the truth and she had no reason to believe he was, then they were working the same case from different angles. D, I am A, and C, two agencies that barely trusted each other on good days. If you're really CIO, Rachel said, then you know I can't just take your word for it. And if you're really DIA, then you know I can't prove it without blowing both our covers. Stalemate. Then Ethan did something unexpected. He holstered his flashlight, held up both hands, and said, how about this? We work together. Share information. Neither of us can afford to trust the other completely, but we also can't afford to work against each other. That's a nice speech. How do I know you're not the leak? You don't. Same way I don't know you're not. He lowered his hands. But I know one thing. You broke into this office for the same reason I did. Because Kessler's dirty. Or at least he's involved somehow. Rachel made a decision, possibly a stupid one. Those emails, they're setting up a meeting tomorrow night. Georgetown. I know, I saw them too. So what's the play? Ethan thought for a moment. We go to the meeting, see who shows up. If it's Kessler, we have our answer. If it's someone else, we follow the trail. And if it's both of us walking into a trap, then we fight our way out. Wouldn't be the first time. Rachel almost smiled. Almost. Okay, we work together. But if you're lying to me, Colonel, I will put you down. Former instructor or not. Understood. Same goes for you, Raven. They left the office separately. Ethan first after checking the hallway. Rachel waited 5 minutes, then slipped out and disappeared into the Pentagon's basement corridors like a ghost. As she walked back to her car, Rachel's phone buzzed. Text from Hawk. New intel. Third suspect, Dr. Petrov, found dead in his apartment 2 hours ago. Apparent suicide. Except he was left-handed and the gun was in his right hand. Rachel stopped walking. Petrov was dead. That left 2 suspects, Kessler and Cross, and she'd just agreed to work with one of them. This was either the smartest decision she'd ever made or the last one. The restaurant in Georgetown was the kind of place where senators had quiet conversations and lobbyists made promises they'd never keep, expensive, discreet, the sort of establishment that valued privacy above all else. Rachel sat in a car half a block away watching the entrance through a telephoto lens. She was dressed differently tonight. Black jeans, dark jacket, hair down. She looked like a graduate student maybe, or a journalist, someone forgettable. Ethan was somewhere on the other side of the street. They'd agreed to maintain separate surveillance. If this went bad, at least one of them might get out. At 7:53, a black sedan pulled up to the restaurant. General Kessler stepped out. He was in civilian clothes, but you could still see the soldier in the way he moved. Upright, alert, always scanning. He went inside. Rachel's radio crackled. Ethan's voice. Target 1 is inside, no sign of Target 2. Target 2 was whoever Kessler was meeting. Presumably the buyer. Presumably Russian based on the emails. Rachel waited. 8 o'clock came and went. 8:15. At 8:23, another car arrived. But it wasn't Russian, it wasn't diplomatic, it was a taxi. A woman got out. Rachel's blood went cold. She knew that face, knew it better than her own. It was burned into her memory from 2 years of nightmares she'd spent a decade trying to forget. The woman was 55 years old, elegant, expensive coat, dark hair streaked with silver. She moved like a dancer, like a killer, like both. Her name was Katya Volkov, former KGB, former Russian intelligence, former a lot of things that weren't supposed to exist anymore. And the woman who'd held Rachel prisoner when she was 17 years old. Rachel's hands shook as she raised the radio. Ethan, we have a problem. I see her. Who is she? Katya Volkov, KGB, she's supposed to be dead. Well, she's not, and she's going inside. Rachel's training warred with her instinct. Training said maintain surveillance, gather intel, report back. Instinct said run, get as far from that woman as possible. Because Katya Volkov didn't just kill people, she destroyed them. She'd almost destroyed Rachel once. But Rachel wasn't 17 anymore. She got out of the car. Ethan's voice crackled urgently. Raven, what are you doing? Something stupid. Cover me. Negative. We maintain surveillance. That's the mission. The mission just changed. Rachel crossed the street and walked into the restaurant like she owned it. The maitre d' started to speak, but she brushed past him, heading for the private dining area in the back. Kessler and Katya sat at a corner table. They didn't see her approach. They were too focused on each other. Rachel stopped 3 feet from the table. Kessler looked up confused. Katya turned, saw Rachel, and smiled. It was the same smile Rachel remembered. The one that said, "I know things about you that you wish you could forget." "Dorogaya," Katya said softly. "Russian for darling. It's been so long." Rachel's voice was steady. "General Kessler, I'm going to need you to come with me. You're under investigation for espionage." Kessler's face went white. "Who the hell are you?" "Defense Intelligence Agency. You're compromised, sir. This woman is former KGB. She's manipulating you." Katya laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, Rachel, still so naive. The general isn't being manipulated. He's a true believer." Kessler stood. "I don't know what she's talking about." "Sit down, Richard," Katya said, and the general sat like a trained dog. Rachel's hand moved toward the concealed weapon at the small of her back. Katya noticed. "Don't. We're in a public place, and you're not here to arrest anyone. You're here because you saw me and couldn't help yourself. I'm here because you're selling American secrets." "No, Dorogaya, I'm here because you need to understand something." Katya leaned forward. "The general isn't the leak. He's just a useful idiot. The real leak is much closer to home." "What are you talking about?" "Your handler, Hawk. He works for me. He's been feeding you information, making you chase shadows while I prepare for something much bigger than stealing old Cold War files." Rachel's world tilted. "You're lying." "Am I? How do you think I knew to meet the general here tonight? How do you think I knew you'd be watching?" Katya stood. "Your handler sold you out, Rachel. Just like everyone sells everyone out eventually. That's the game." Before Rachel could respond, her phone buzzed. Text from Hawk. "Abort mission. Compromised. Shadow protocol active. Get out now." Shadow protocol. Rachel knew what that meant. Burn notice. Disavow. She was being cut loose. Katya saw her expression and smiled again. "There it is. The moment you realize you've been played." Rachel drew her weapon. Every civilian in the restaurant screamed. Kessler dove for cover. Katya didn't move. "Shoot me," she said calmly. "Prove you're still that frightened girl I taught to kill. Or walk away and find out the truth about what's really happening." Ethan burst through the door, weapon drawn. "Raven, we need to go. Now, building is surrounded." Rachel looked past Katya out the window. Black SUVs, men in tactical gear. Too many. Not police, not FBI, shadow protocol operators. Her own agency was burning her. Ethan grabbed her arm. "We run or we die. Choose." Rachel lowered her weapon and ran. They went out the back, through the kitchen, into the alley. Behind them, boots pounded on pavement. Tactical teams were fast, but Rachel and Ethan were faster. They commandeered Ethan's car, an old Ford pickup, parked 2 blocks away, and drove like hell. Rachel's phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the caller ID said unknown all, which meant it was routed through a dozen proxies. She answered. A male voice, unfamiliar. "Rachel Morrison, Lieutenant Colonel, Delta Force." "Who is this?" "Someone who wants to help. Your handler burned you. Shadow Protocol wants you dead, but there's still a way out." "I'm listening." "Drive to the coordinates I'm texting you. Come alone." "I'm not alone." "Then bring Colonel Cross. I know he's with you. I know everything, Rachel, because I'm the one who started all of this." "Who are you?" The voice paused. Then, "My name is David Morrison. I'm your father, and I've been dead for 18 years, or at least that's what everyone thinks." The line went dead. Rachel stared at the phone. Ethan glanced at her. "What is it?" "My father, he's alive. Your father died in 2022, helicopter crash." "That's what I thought too." A text arrived. Coordinates, Nevada, middle of nowhere. Ethan read it over her shoulder. "That's 3 days' drive from here." "Then we better get started." As they merged onto the highway heading west, Rachel's phone buzzed one more time. Another text from an unknown number. "Hello, little bird. Did you miss me? This is only the beginning. Love, Phoenix." Phoenix, the code name Katya Volkov used when she worked for the KGB. Rachel looked out the window at the city disappearing behind them. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Her handler had betrayed her. Her father was alive. And the woman who tortured her 17 years ago was pulling strings she didn't even know existed. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, answers waited. But first, Rachel had to survive long enough to find them. The hunt had begun, and she was both the hunter and the prey. Part 2, Ghost Protocol. The Nevada desert looked like the surface of Mars. Rachel Morrison sat in the passenger seat of Ethan Cross's pickup truck, watching endless miles of nothing roll past the window. They'd been driving for 51 hours with minimal stops. Gas stations, truck stop bathrooms, drive-through coffee that tasted like diesel. Neither of them had slept more than 20 minutes at a time. Behind them, somewhere in the 3,000 miles they'd covered, Shadow Protocol was hunting. Rachel's phone had gone dark after that last text from Phoenix. She'd pulled the battery, smashed the SIM card, thrown both pieces into different dumpsters in different states. Ethan had done the same. They were ghosts now, cut off, burned, on the run from the very agencies they'd sworn to serve, and driving toward a man who was supposed to be dead, Rachel's father. Colonel David Morrison had died in 2022. That's what the official report said. Helicopter crash during a training exercise. Mechanical failure. The body had been recovered. There'd been a funeral. Full military honors. Rachel had stood at Arlington National Cemetery and watched them fold the flag. She kept that flag for 3 years. It sat in a box in her apartment. Or it had before Shadow Protocol raided the place. But now apparently her father was alive. And he'd been alive this whole time. Rachel didn't know which was worse. The idea that he'd faked his death without telling her, or the idea that he'd watched her grieve for 3 years and never said a word. "You okay?" Ethan asked. It was the first either of them had spoken in 6 hours. "No," Rachel said. "Yeah, me neither." The coordinates led them to a location 50 miles north of Tonopah. Middle of nowhere. Not even a town nearby, just empty desert and mountains that looked like broken teeth. They arrived at dusk. The sky was bleeding orange and purple. Long shadows stretched across the sand. There was nothing here. Just scrub brush and rocks. Rachel checked the coordinates again. They were exact. "This is the place," she said. Ethan scanned the horizon. "I don't see anything." "Neither do I." They sat in the truck, engine running, waiting. Then the ground moved. Not an earthquake. Something else. A section of desert floor 30 feet in front of them began to rise. Hydraulics hissed. Sand slid off what turned out to be a massive steel panel disguised to look like natural terrain. Beneath it, a ramp descended into darkness. A voice crackled from the truck's radio. Male, calm, authoritative. "Drive down the ramp. Park when you reach the bottom. Leave your weapons in the vehicle. You have 60 seconds before the door closes." Ethan looked at Rachel. "Your call." Rachel thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she said, "We came this far." Ethan drove down the ramp. The steel door closed above them with a sound like the gates of hell sealing shut. The underground facility was vast. The ramp led to a parking area large enough for 20 vehicles. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The walls were reinforced concrete. This wasn't some improvised bunker. This was military construction. Cold War era by the look of it. One of the old fallout shelters, maybe. Decommissioned in the 90s when everyone thought the threat was over. Except it hadn't been decommissioned. Someone had kept it active, maintained, hidden. Rachel and Ethan got out of the truck, left their weapons like the voice had instructed. They were both carrying concealed backups anyway. Old habit. Never trust anyone completely. A door opened at the far end of the parking area. A man stepped through. Rachel recognized him instantly. 65 years old, 6 feet tall, ramrod straight posture, gray hair cut military short, lines on his face that came from decades of hard decisions, eyes that looked exactly like hers. Colonel David Morrison, her father, alive. Rachel's legs forgot how to work. She stood there frozen while her father walked toward her with the steady pace of a man who'd walked into firefights without flinching. He stopped 3 feet away. Neither of them spoke. Then David Morrison said very quietly, "Hello, sweetheart." Rachel's hand moved before her brain caught up. The slap echoed in the concrete space like a gunshot. Her father didn't react, didn't even touch his face where her palm had left a red mark. "I deserved that," he said. "You deserved worse." Rachel's voice shook. Not from fear, from rage. 3 years. I mourned you for 3 years. "I know. I stood at your funeral. I folded your flag. I cried myself to sleep for 6 months. I know. And you were alive the whole time." "Yes." Rachel wanted to hit him again, wanted to scream, wanted to demand answers. But the training kicked in. The training always kicked in. Emotions were liabilities. Control was survival. She stepped back. "Why?" David glanced at Ethan. "Colonel Cross, thank you for keeping my daughter alive." Ethan nodded. "Sir, I know you have questions. Both of you, let me show you something first, then I'll explain everything." He turned and walked back toward the door. After a moment, Rachel followed. Ethan came behind her, staying alert, watching for threats. They went through this door into a corridor that looked like it belonged in a submarine. Narrow, metal walls, emergency lighting every 10 feet. The air smelled recycled. David led them deeper into the facility, past living quarters, past storage rooms, past what looked like an armory stocked with enough weapons to fight a small war. Finally, they reached a command center. The room was filled with monitors, dozens of them. showing satellite feeds, news broadcasts, data streams. In the center was a chair that looked like something from a spacecraft. Control panels surrounded it on all sides. David sat in the chair, turned to face them. This, he said, is Ghost Protocol. Rachel stared at the screens. What is this place? During the Cold War, the Pentagon built 12 facilities like this one, deep underground, off the books. The idea was simple. If nuclear war started, command and control would be decapitated. We needed backup. Hidden command centers that could survive and continue operations. But the Cold War ended, Ethan said. The Cold War never ended, Colonel. It just went underground. David touched a control panel. One of the main screens changed to show a map of the United States. 47 red dots appeared across the country. Operation Coldfire, David continued. 47 nuclear bunkers buried across America, built between 1962 and 1987. Each one contains enough warheads to level a major city. They were designed to be the ultimate deterrent. Hidden, unknown to enemies, impossible to neutralize with a first strike. Rachel felt her stomach drop. That's insane. That's mutual assured destruction. We built them. The Soviets built their own version. Everyone knew everyone else had doomsday weapons, but nobody knew where they were. Kept us all honest, or at least kept us from pushing the button. Why are you telling us this? Rachel asked. David's expression hardened. Because someone is trying to sell the locations. All 47 coordinates. To Russia, to China, to Iran, to anyone willing to pay. Katya Volkov, Rachel said. Her father's face showed no surprise. You've met her. She's the one who had me when I was 17. She's the one who, Rachel stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. David's jaw tightened. I know what she did to you. I've known the whole time. And I've been hunting her for 18 years. You faked your death to hunt a KGB agent. I faked my death because Katya discovered I was Ghost Commander. The only person with full access to Coldfire. She tried to get to me through you and your brother. I couldn't let that happen. So I died. Publicly. Officially. Left you and Ryan to think I was gone. Became a ghost. Rachel's mind raced. Ryan, my brother, he died in 2021, Syria. David's expression shifted. Pain flashed across his face. Real pain. No, he said quietly. He didn't. The world tilted. What? Ryan is alive. Katya has him. She's been holding him in a black site for 4 years. Rachel couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Her brother, Ryan, the person she'd been closest to in the entire world. Dead at 29 or so, she'd thought. Another funeral, another flag, another hole torn in her life. And he'd been alive the whole time. Prisoner. Tortured. Where Rachel's voice came out as a whisper. David touched another control. The map changed. Zoomed in on Alaska, a location in the wilderness hundreds of miles from civilization. Shadow Protocol black site. Katya controls it through proxies. She's kept Ryan alive as leverage. If I don't give her Coldfire access, she kills him. If I do give her access, she kills millions. How long have you known? 3 months. I've been trying to put together a team to extract him, but I can't use official channels. Shadow Protocol has been compromised from the inside. Anyone I reach out to might be working for Katya. Ethan spoke up. That's why you contacted Rachel. You need operators you can trust. Yes, and I need my daughter because she's the only other person with Morrison DNA. Coldfire's final security requires genetic verification. 2 people from the Morrison bloodline entering codes simultaneously. It was designed that way to prevent one person from going rogue. Rachel understood. You can't shut down Coldfire without me, and you can't save Ryan without shutting down Coldfire. Exactly. David stood. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help me finish this. Save your brother. Stop Katya. Make sure those 47 bunkers never get used. Rachel looked at the screens, at the red dots scattered across America, each one representing unimaginable destruction. Then she looked at her father, the man who'd abandoned her, who'd let her think he was dead, who'd built his whole life around keeping secrets, but also the man who'd spent 18 years in the shadows trying to prevent World War III. I need a team, Rachel said. David nodded. I can help with that. 24 hours later, they had 5 people. Master Chief Marcus Hammer Stone, 48 years old, Navy SEAL retired, 230 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. He'd served with Ethan in Team 6. When Ethan called, Hammer had been running a ranch in Montana. He'd left everything and driven straight through, arrived covered in road dust and ready for war. Captain Dean Wraith Carter, 38 years old, Army sniper, Delta Force, 212 confirmed kills. He'd served with Rachel in Afghanistan. Saved her life twice. She'd saved his 3 times. When she called, he was in Virginia visiting his daughter. He kissed his ex-wife goodbye, told his daughter he loved her, and got on a plane. Sergeant Blair Valkyrie Reeves, 35 years old. Explosive ordnance disposal, then Delta Force, then private security, then retirement that lasted 6 months before she got bored. Rachel had trained with her, respected her, trusted her with things she didn't trust most people with. Valkyrie arrived carrying 2 duffel bags full of C4 and DEET cord. Just in case, she said. Lieutenant Nathan Nomad Walker, 40 years old, former Army Ranger, intelligence specialist, spoke 7 languages, could hack any system given enough time. He was the wild card. Rachel didn't know him personally, but Ethan vouched for him. And right now, vouching was all they had. 5 operators, plus Rachel, Ethan, and David. 8 people against an organization that had spent decades building power in the shadows. The odds weren't great, but they'd all faced worse odds before. David briefed them in the command center, showed them the maps, explained Coldfire, laid out the mission. Phase 1 extract Ryan Morrison from the Alaska Black Site. Phase 2, get to Nevada facility and lock down Coldfire before Katya could sell the coordinates. Phase 3, dismantle Shadow Protocol from the inside. Simple, direct, almost certainly impossible. Questions, David asked. Hammer raised his hand. Yeah, what's the survival rate on this thing? Statistically, 15%. I've had worse. Hammer grinned. It was not a reassuring expression. Wraith checked his rifle. When do we leave? 6 hours, David said. Gives us time to prep gear and get some rest. We fly out at 0400. Civilian aircraft to Anchorage, then bush plane to a drop zone 40 miles from the Black Site. Hike in, hit the facility, extract Ryan, exfil via the same route. Security at the Black Site, Valkyrie asked. 40 personnel, mix of Shadow Protocol operators and Russian contractors Katya hired. Heavily armed. They've got satellite surveillance motion sensors and guard rotations every 4 hours. So a light workout, Valkyrie said. Nobody laughed. It wasn't that kind of joke. Rachel studied the satellite photos of the Black Site. It was built into the side of a mountain. One way in, one way out. Kill box design. Anyone attacking would be exposed and outgunned. This is a suicide mission, she said. David met her eyes. Yes, but it's the only one we have. They flew north as the sun rose. The civilian aircraft took them to Anchorage without incident. From there, a bush pilot named Jake, who asked no questions and got paid in cash, flew them into the wilderness. Jake dropped them in a clearing surrounded by pine trees and mountains. The temperature was 20 degrees below zero. Wind cut through their gear like knives. Good luck, Jake said as they unloaded. Don't die out here. I'd hate to lose a repeat customer. He took off, leaving them alone in the silence. 8 people, 40 miles of frozen hell, and a fortress full of killers at the end. They humped in light. Weapons, ammo, minimal supplies. Speed was everything. They had 18 hours to cover the distance, hit the target, and get back to the exfil point before Jake returned. Rachel set the pace. Fast, but sustainable. They moved in tactical formation. Wraith on point, Hammer on rear security, the others spread between. Nobody talked. Talking wasted energy, and energy was survival. After 12 hours, they reached the ridge overlooking the Black Site. David had been right about the security. The facility was a concrete bunker built into the mountain. Guard towers, floodlights, perimeter fence topped with razor wire, cameras covering every approach. Wraith glassed it through his scope. 40 personnel is lowballing it. I count 60, maybe more inside. Changes the math, Hammer said. Doesn't change the mission, Rachel replied. They watched the guards rotate, timed the patterns. Nomad hacked into the camera feeds using a portable relay, gave them a view of the interior. The Black Site had 3 levels. Upper-level guard quarters, armory command center, middle-level interrogation rooms, cells, lower-level high-value prisoners. Ryan would be on the lower level. We go in quiet, Rachel said. Breach the fence here. She pointed to a blind spot between cameras. Valkyrie takes out the generator. Lights go down, we move fast. Nomad guides us via camera feeds. Wraith provides overwatch. Hammer, Ethan, and I clear to the lower level. David stays here coordinating. I'm going in, David said. No, you're the only one who can access Coldfire. If you die here, this whole thing is for nothing. David started to argue, stopped, nodded. Okay, but if you're not out in 20 minutes, I'm coming in anyway. 20 minutes, Rachel agreed. They moved at midnight. Valkyrie cut the fence in 40 seconds. They slipped through like shadows. Reached the generator building. Valkyrie placed charges. Set a timer. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was small but effective. The lights died. Emergency generators kicked in 3 seconds later, but that was enough. Rachel was already inside. She moved through the dark corridors with Hammer and Ethan behind her, Nomad's voice in her ear guiding. Left corridor, 2 guards, 20 feet. Rachel raised her suppressed pistol. 2 shots. Both guards dropped. They descended stairs. Reached the middle level. More guards. More targets. This wasn't like Afghanistan. This wasn't combat against an enemy she could hate without complication. These were Americans. Probably. Or at least people working for an American agency. But they were also keeping her brother prisoner. Rachel didn't hesitate. Neither did Hammer or Ethan. They cleared the middle level in 8 minutes. 12 hostiles down. None of them made a sound. Lower level. The cells? Rachel checked each one. Empty, empty, empty. Then the last cell. A man sat on a metal bench. Thin, too thin. Beard down to his chest. Scars across his bare arms. But the eyes were the same. Ryan Morrison looked up as Rachel opened the cell door. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Ryan said hoarsely, "Hey sis, took you long enough." Rachel crossed the cell and pulled her brother into a hug that hurt. Ryan hugged back. He was shaking. From cold, from malnutrition, from 4 years of hell. "Can you walk?" Rachel asked. "Can I walk? I'm a goddamn Morrison. Of course I can walk." He stood. Wobbled. Ethan caught him. "We need to move," Hammer said from the doorway. "Whole place is waking up." They ran. Back up the stairs. Through corridors now filled with guards responding to the breach. Gunfire erupted. Hammer returned fire, his M4 barking in the enclosed space. Ethan half-carried Ryan while Rachel cleared corners. Wraith's voice in their ears. "You've got 20 tangos converging on your position. Move faster." They reached the exit, burst into the freezing night, and found 40 armed contractors waiting for them. Floodlights blazed, rifles aimed. Standing in front of them all was a man Rachel recognized from the mission briefings. General Richard Kessler, 68 years old. Vietnam POW, American hero. And apparently working for Katya Volkov. "Stand down," Kessler ordered. "Morrison, cross. Drop your weapons or I will have my men open fire." Rachel raised her rifle. "Not happening, General." Kessler sighed. "You don't understand. I'm not the enemy here. Katya is playing everyone, including your father. My father is trying to stop World War III. Your father is trying to protect a weapon that should never have existed. Cold fire needs to be destroyed. That's why I've been working with Katya, to get access, to shut it down. By selling the coordinates to Russia? No, by using Russia's fear of exposure to force the Pentagon to decommission the whole system. Mutual assured destruction only works if both sides believe the other is rational. Katya convinced me that making cold fire public would force both sides to stand down." Rachel processed that. "You're an idiot, General. Katya doesn't want cold fire decommissioned. She wants to sell it to the highest bidder. That's what your father told you. But has it occurred to you that he might be lying? That he's been lying for 18 years? Doubt crept in, cold and poisonous. Then Ryan spoke. His voice was weak but clear. "General, with all due respect, go to hell." He raised a pistol Rachel hadn't even noticed he'd taken from one of the guards, and shot Kessler. The round hit the general in the shoulder. Not fatal, but it dropped him. His men opened fire. Chaos. Hammer returned fire. Ethan dragged Ryan toward cover. Rachel sprinted for the fence. Wraith's rifle cracked from the ridge. Impossible shots in the dark. But he made them anyway. Contractors dropped. 1, 2, 5. Valkyrie detonated the rest of her C4. The armory exploded. Secondary explosions followed as ammunition cooked off. Rachel reached the fence, squeezed through the cut Valkyrie had made, turned to cover the others. Hammer came through, then Ethan carrying Ryan. Wraith's rifle went silent. Rachel's radio crackled. "I'm out of ammo. Moving to secondary position." Then a different voice, Nomad. "We have a problem." Kessler's men called for backup. Helicopter inbound, ETA 4 minutes. 4 minutes. They'd never make it to the exfil point in time. David's voice, "Get to the river, half a mile east. I'm coming to you." They ran. Ryan couldn't keep up. Ethan carried him. Hammer and Rachel provided rear security. Behind them, the helicopter arrived. Searchlight swept the trees. They reached the river, frozen solid. David was already there with 2 snowmobiles he'd somehow acquired. "Get on," he shouted. They mounted up. 3 per snowmobile. Engines roared. The helicopter found them. Minigun opened up. Tracers lit the night. David drove like a man possessed, weaving between trees. The river ice cracked beneath them but held. Half a mile, 1 mile, 2. The helicopter ran out of ammo. Or gave up. Either way, it peeled off. They reached the exfil point at 0347, 3 minutes before Jake was scheduled to arrive. The bush plane landed on a frozen lake. They piled in. Jake looked at them. At the blood. At Ryan barely conscious. At the smoke rising from the mountains behind them. "I don't want to know," he said. "Good," Rachel replied. They flew south as the sun rose. Rachel sat next to Ryan, held his hand. He was sleeping or unconscious, hard to tell. But he was alive. For the first time in 4 years, her brother was alive. David sat across from them. He hadn't spoken since they'd escaped. Finally, Rachel said, "Kessler, what he said, about Katya, about you lying." "It's true," David said quietly. "I have been lying for 18 years about a lot of things." "Like what?" "Like cold fire. It's worse than I told you. The 47 bunkers aren't just deterrents, they're automated. If certain conditions are met, if the system detects what it interprets as a nuclear first strike, they activate automatically. No human input required." Rachel stared. "That's insane. That's Cold War logic. Build a weapon so terrible that using it would end the world. Make it automatic so the enemy knows you can't back down. Mutually assured destruction. And Katya knows this. Katya knows everything because I told her. 15 years ago, when I thought she was someone I could trust, the pieces clicked into place. You had a relationship with her." David didn't deny it. "After the Cold War ended, Katya defected. CIA brought her in. I was assigned to debrief her. We worked together for 3 years. I fell in love with her. Told her secrets I should never have shared, including cold fire. And she used those secrets against you." "Yes. When she disappeared in 2010, I realized what she'd been planning all along. She wasn't defecting, she was infiltrating, learning our systems, building shadow protocol from the inside. And I'd given her the keys to the kingdom." Rachel felt sick. "Ryan, she took him because of you." "Yes. And me, when I was 17, that was because of you." "Yes." Rachel wanted to hit him again. Wanted to scream. But Ryan's hand twitched in hers. Still alive. Still fighting. "When we get to Nevada," Rachel said, voice flat, "you're going to tell me everything, every lie, every secret, and then we're going to stop her, together." David nodded. "Agreed." The plane flew on through the dawn. Behind them, Alaska disappeared into clouds. Ahead, Nevada waited, and Katya Volkov was already there. Part 3, Endgame. The Nevada facility's medical base smelled like antiseptic and old concrete. Rachel Morrison sat next to her brother's bed watching him sleep. Real sleep this time, not unconsciousness. The IV drip fed nutrients into his system. The monitors beeped steadily, heart rate stable, blood pressure improving. Ryan had been in bad shape when they'd arrived 12 hours ago. Malnourished, dehydrated, multiple old fractures that had healed wrong, scars from interrogation techniques Rachel recognized because she'd been trained in the same methods. 4 years of captivity, 4 years of torture, and through it all, he'd never broken. Never told Katya what she wanted to know, because he didn't know anything. He'd just been leverage, a way to control their father, Rachel's father. Colonel David Morrison sat in the command center coordinating, preparing, trying to stay 3 steps ahead of a woman who'd been playing this game longer than Rachel had been alive. Ethan Cross entered the medical bay, handed Rachel a cup of coffee. "How's he doing?" Ethan asked. "Better. Doctor says he'll make a full recovery, physically anyway. And mentally." Rachel thought about that, about what 4 years in a hole did to a person, about the nightmares Ryan would have, the trust issues, the way certain sounds or smells would send him back to that cell. She knew. She'd had 2 years. Ryan had double that. "He'll survive," Rachel said. "Morrisons don't break." "Is that true, or is that just what you tell yourself?" Rachel looked at Ethan, really looked at him. This man who'd been her instructor 9 years ago, who'd pushed her harder than anyone else because he knew the world wouldn't go easy on her, who'd trusted her enough to go rogue when Shadow Protocol burned them both. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "Everything I thought was solid turned out to be lies. My father's alive. My brother's alive. The agency I worked for wants me dead. And the woman who tortured me is about to start World War III. Then we stop her." "Just like that." "Just like that." Ethan sat down. "Look, I've been doing this for 23 years. Black Ops, classified missions, things that never happened in places that don't exist. And you know what I've learned? What? The truth is always worse than you think. The lies are always deeper. The betrayals are always closer to home. But at the end of the day, you still have to make a choice. Do you give up or do you fight? You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. Rachel's phone buzzes, text from Nomad. Analysis complete. You need to see this. Command center, now. Rachel stood. Duty calls. The command center was crowded. All 8 of them gathered around the main display. Nomad stood at the controls pulling up data streams. I've been analyzing Katya's communications, Nomad said. Intercepted transmissions, financial records, flight manifests, and I found something interesting. He brought up a map. Flight paths highlighted in red. Katya's been moving around, a lot. Prague, Istanbul, Dubai, Singapore, meeting with buyers. But 3 days ago, she stopped moving. She's in one location, and she's been there ever since. Where? David asked. The map zoomed in, Nevada, specifically a location 40 miles from their current facility. She's here, Nomad said, in Nevada, at what appears to be another underground installation. Bigger than this one, military construction, Cold War era. David's face went pale. That's not possible. There are only 12 Ghost Protocol facilities. I know the location of all of them. Then this is number 13, the one someone kept off the books. Rachel studied the map. How close can we get? By vehicle, 20 miles. Then it's rough terrain. We'd have to hike the rest. Security. Unknown. Satellite imaging shows nothing above ground. Whatever's there is completely hidden. Hammer leaned forward. So we're going in blind. Not completely blind, Nomad said. He pulled up another screen. Financial records. Katya's been moving money, a lot of money, paying contractors, buying equipment. And 3 days ago, she made a massive transfer, $500 million, split between 3 accounts. Russia, China, Iran. She sold Coldfire, Rachel said. Not yet, David corrected. That's a down payment. The full transaction happens when she delivers the complete data package, which means she hasn't accessed Coldfire yet. She can't. She needs Morrison DNA to get past the final security. Then why is she here? Valkyrie asked. David thought about it. Because she's forcing me to make a choice. Either I come to her and input my genetic code, or she activates a contingency plan that's probably worse than just selling the coordinates. What kind of contingency? I don't know, but Katya doesn't bluff. If she says she has a backup plan, she has one. Rachel's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Katya Volkov's voice. Smooth. Cultured. The voice from Rachel's nightmares. Hello, Dorogaya. I hope you found your brother in acceptable condition. Rachel's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? To talk, in person. You, your father, and Colonel Cross. Come to my facility, alone, unarmed. We'll have a civilized conversation about how this ends. And if we don't, then in 12 hours I trigger Coldfire's automated defense protocol. The system will interpret my trigger as a nuclear first strike. All 47 bunkers will activate. The warheads will launch. Millions will die. Maybe billions depending on how Russia and China respond. You're bluffing. Am I? Your father knows I'm not. Don't you, David? You know exactly what I'm capable of. David took the phone from Rachel. Katya, don't do this. Come see me, my love. We'll discuss terms. You have 12 hours. The countdown starts now. The line went dead. David stood motionless. His face was the color of old snow. She's not bluffing, he said quietly. She has access to the trigger codes. I don't know how, but she does, and she'll use them. Then we go, Rachel said. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, but we don't have a choice, Ethan agreed. She holds all the cards. We go. We negotiate. We find an opening. We take her down. Or we die trying, Hammer added. Either way beats sitting here waiting for the world to end. David looked at his team. 8 people. Veterans. Killers. Patriots. Then he looked at his daughter. Okay, he said. We go. But we go smart. Nomad, Hammer, Wraith, Valkyrie, you 4 stay here. Set up overwatch positions around Katya's facility. If this goes bad, you provide suppressing fire and extract whoever's left. And Ryan, Rachel asked? Ryan stays here, under guard. If we don't make it back, Nomad has instructions to get him out and disappear. Ryan's voice came from the doorway. He was standing. Pale, weak, but standing. I'm coming with you. No, David said. She tortured me for 4 years, Dad. I deserve to look her in the eye. You can barely stand. I'm a Morrison. I'll manage. David looked like he wanted to argue, but Rachel recognized the expression on Ryan's face. She'd seen it in the mirror. He comes, Rachel said. We all go together as a family. They drove through the desert as the sun climbed toward noon. Two vehicles. Rachel, Ethan, David, and Ryan in the first. Hammer, Wraith, Valkyrie, and Nomad in the second. 20 miles. Then the vehicles stopped. The terrain ahead was too rough. They hiked. Ryan kept pace through sheer stubbornness. Ethan stayed close in case he fell. 2 hours later, they found it. A depression in the ground. Natural camouflage. But underneath steel panels, a door large enough to drive a tank through. As they approached, the door opened. Hydraulics hissed. Sand cascaded down. A woman stood in the opening. Katya Volkov looked exactly as Rachel remembered. 55 years old, but she could pass for 40. Dark hair, cold eyes. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. She smiled. Welcome. I've been waiting for you. The facility was a mirror of David's. Same design, same Cold War aesthetic, but bigger, more ambitious. Katya led them through corridors lit by emergency lighting. Their footsteps echoed. You're wondering how I knew about this place, Katya said. David told me, 18 years ago, when we were lovers, when he trusted me. David didn't respond. They entered a command center twice the size of the one at David's facility. Screens everywhere. And in the center, a control station with 2 chairs. Coldfire's master controls, Katya explained. This facility was built as a backup, in case the primary command centers were destroyed. From here, I can access the entire system. Activate the bunkers, launch the warheads, end the world. Or sell the coordinates and walk away rich, Rachel said. Yes, that was the plan. $500 million for information that will shift the global balance of power. Russia gets the locations, they can neutralize the threat. America loses its hidden deterrent. A new order emerges. You don't care about the new order, you just want revenge. Katya's smile faded. Revenge, yes. Against the country that abandoned me. The KGB that left me to rot in a Chechen prison. The Americans who used me and discarded me. I've spent 25 years building this moment, and now it's here. Then why bring us here, Ethan asked. Why not just execute your plan? Because there's a problem. Katya touched the control panel. Coldfire's final security requires genetic authentication. 2 Morrison family members entering codes simultaneously. I have the codes. But I don't have Morrison DNA. She looked at David, then at Rachel, then at Ryan. I need one of you to help me. Voluntarily, input your code, give me access. In exchange, I won't trigger the automated defense. The world survives, you get to walk away, everyone wins. Except America loses its nuclear deterrent, David said. America has enough nuclear weapons. You don't need Coldfire, it's a relic, a mistake. Let it go. And if we refuse, Katya pressed a button. One of the main screens changed, countdown timer. 11 hours, 42 minutes. Then the timer runs out. Coldfire interprets it as an attack. Automated defense activates. World War III begins, your choice. Rachel looked at her father, at her brother, at Ethan. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, trapped, but they were still alive. And that meant they still had a chance. Okay, Rachel said, I'll do it. David grabbed her arm. No, we don't have a choice, Dad. If we don't, she triggers the system anyway. At least this way some people survive. Rachel, trust me, those 2 words. The hardest thing she'd ever said. David looked at her, really looked, and saw something in her eyes. He let go. Rachel walked to the control station, sat in one of the chairs. Katya sat in the other. Smart choice. Now place your hand on the biometric scanner. Rachel placed her hand on the panel. It glowed, reading her DNA, confirming identity. Morrison Rachel, authorization level alpha. Good, Katya said. Now I'll enter my code. You enter yours. Simultaneously. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Rachel grabbed Katya's hand and slammed it into the control panel. Hard enough to crack bone. Katya screamed, tried to pull away, but Rachel held on. Used Katya's own hand to smash the biometric scanner. Sparks flew, the screen flickered. Error messages cascaded. System malfunction. Genetic authentication failed. Lockdown initiated. Alarms blared. Ethan moved, grabbed David and Ryan. Go now. They ran. Katya lunged at Rachel. Fast, trained, lethal. Rachel met her head on. They'd both been trained by the same people. Knew the same moves, anticipated the same strikes. The fight was brutal. Close quarters, no room for error. Katya got a knife from somewhere, slashed at Rachel's throat. Rachel blocked with her forearm. The blade cut through her sleeve, drew blood. Rachel countered with an elbow strike, caught Katya in the jaw, followed with a knee to the ribs. Katya stumbled back, smiled through bloody teeth. There's the girl I trained, the killer. I'm not a killer anymore. Aren't you? Katya attacked again. Rachel defended, blocked, countered. But Katya was faster, older, more experienced. She got inside Rachel's guard, drove the knife toward Rachel's heart. A gunshot. Katya jerked, looked down, blood spread across her chest. She turned. Ryan stood in the doorway, pistol raised, hands shaking. That was for 4 years, he said. Katya collapsed. Rachel ran to her brother, grabbed him. We need to move. The facility was coming apart. The lockdown had triggered self-destruct protocols. Explosions echoed through the corridors. They ran through smoke and chaos, found David and Ethan waiting at the exit. Outside, the team was already moving. Hammer provided covering fire as Shadow Protocol reinforcements arrived from somewhere. Wraith's rifle cracked. Valkyrie detonated charges. They fought their way clear, ran across the desert as the facility exploded behind them. The ground shook. A mushroom cloud of dust and debris rose into the sky. They reached the vehicles, piled in, drove away as fast as the engines would take them. 10 miles, 20, 30. Finally, David pulled over. They sat in silence, breathing, bleeding, alive. Is it over? Ryan asked. David checked his phone, pulled up the cold fire monitoring system. All 47 bunkers showed green, inactive, safe. It's over, he said. Rachel leaned back, closed her eyes. It was over. Katya was dead. Shadow Protocol would collapse without her. Cold fire was locked down. The world would keep turning. For now, 3 months later, Rachel Morrison stood in Arlington National Cemetery. Not at her father's grave this time, at a new one. The headstone read Katya Volkov, 1970 to 2025. No epitaph. They'd buried her with military honors. She'd been an enemy, a traitor, a monster. But she'd also been a soldier, once, a long time ago, before the world broke her. Rachel didn't forgive her, would never forgive her, but she understood her. Both of them had been turned into weapons by men who saw them as tools. Both of them had fought to reclaim their humanity. Katya had lost that fight. Rachel was still fighting. Ethan walked up beside her. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About it. About what happens next. Next you come work for me. Rachel looked at him. Doing what? Training the next generation. I've been offered a position at Fort Bragg, instructor for the new Special Operations Integration Program, teaching operators how to work together across service branches. They want me to build a team. I want you as my second in command. I'm not sure I'm cut out for teaching. You taught yourself to survive when most people would have broken. You taught your brother to hold on when hope was gone. You taught all of us that sometimes the right choice is trusting people even when every instinct says not to. Rachel thought about it, about going back to Fort Bragg, about training young operators, about turning killers into protectors. Okay, she said, I'm in. Good, because I already told them you'd say yes. Rachel laughed, actually laughed. It felt strange, good, human. They walked away from the grave together. Behind them, David Morrison stood by the headstone. He'd been there the whole time, watching, mourning, for Katya, for what they'd had, for what she'd become. Ryan joined him, leaned on his father's shoulder. You loved her, Ryan said. Yes, even after everything. Love doesn't stop just because someone becomes a monster. It just hurts more. Do you regret it? David thought about that, about the choices he'd made, the lies he'd told, the people he'd hurt trying to do the right thing. Yes, he said, but I'd do it again, because in the end we stopped her. We saved the world, and sometimes that's all you can do. They stood together as the sun set, father and son. Both alive, both damaged, both healing. 6 months later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Rachel stood in front of a class of 20 operators, 10 men, 10 women, all of them the best their respective branches had to offer. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Morrison, she said. Call sign Raven. I'm going to teach you how to stay alive, how to work as a team, and how to make the hard choices when everything's going to hell. The operators stared at her, some skeptical, some curious, all of them wondering if she was as good as her reputation. Rachel smiled. First lesson, trust is earned, not given. So let's see what you've got. She led them outside to the training course. Ethan watched from his observation tower. Beside him stood David Morrison, officially retired, unofficially consulting on classified programs that didn't exist. She's good at this, David said. She's good at everything. She just needed to believe it. Below, Rachel put the operators through their paces, obstacle course, combat drills, tactical problem solving. She pushed them hard, not because she wanted to break them, but because she wanted them to discover they were stronger than they thought, just like she had. At the end of the day, Rachel dismissed the class. They limped away exhausted, but better than they'd been that morning. Rachel sat on a bench, watched the sunset. Ethan joined her, handed her a bottle of water. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Tired, satisfied, human. That's progress." "Yeah." Rachel drank the water. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "I'm not defined by what was done to me anymore. I'm defined by what I choose to do. Every day, every decision, every person I help become stronger. That's not just progress, that's wisdom." Rachel looked at him, this man who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself, who'd stood beside her through hell and never wavered. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." "I already know." "You don't." "I do." He took her hand, and I feel the same way. They sat in silence as the day ended and the night began. Two warriors, two survivors, two people who'd been broken and put themselves back together stronger than before. A month later, they were married. Small ceremony, just family and the team. Hammer served as best man, Valkyrie as maid of honor. Wraith gave an awkward speech. Nomad cried. David walked Rachel down the aisle. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "I know, Dad. I'm sorry for—" "I know. It's okay. We're okay." And they were. The past was the past. The wounds had scarred, but scars were proof of survival. Rachel married Ethan Cross under an oak tree at Fort Bragg, promised to stand by him, to trust him, to build a life together, and meant every word. After the ceremony, after the cake and the dancing and the terrible jokes, Rachel stood alone for a moment, looking at the stars. Ryan joined her. "Hey, sis." "Hey, little brother." They stood together, brother and sister, both alive against all odds. "You know what I realized," Ryan said. "What?" "We're not victims, not anymore. We survived, we fought back, we won." "Yeah, we did." "So what now?" Rachel thought about it, about the future, about the students she'd train, the lives she'd save, the difference she'd make. "Now we live," she said, "really live. Not just survive, live." Ryan nodded. "I can do that." "Me too." They watched the stars together. Somewhere above them, satellites monitored the world. 47 bunkers sat silent and safe. Old weapons from an old war locked away and forgotten. The world kept turning. And Rachel Morrison, daughter, sister, wife, warrior, teacher, turned with it. Not as a weapon, as a human being. And that made all the difference. The end. Epilogue. 1 year later, Rachel stood in front of a new class. Ethan beside her. Behind them, a banner, Fort Bragg Special Operations Integration Program, Class of 2027. 20 new faces, 20 new operators, the best and brightest. Among them, 10 women. More than there'd ever been before. Progress. Rachel began the same way she always did. "My name is Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Morrison, call sign Raven. I'm going to teach you how to stay alive." But this time she added something new. "I'm also going to teach you that being a warrior doesn't mean losing your humanity. It means protecting it, for yourself and for others." The operators listened, and Rachel taught. She taught them tactics, strategy, combat skills. But most importantly, she taught them that strength wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, moral. It was knowing when to fight and when to protect, when to kill and when to save. It was being a weapon when necessary, but remaining human always. At the end of the year, all 20 graduated. They went on to serve with distinction, to save lives, to make impossible choices and live with them. They became the next generation of warriors. And they did it because Rachel Morrison showed them how. Years passed. David Morrison eventually passed away, peacefully, in his sleep, surrounded by family. They buried him at Arlington with full honors, this time for real. Rachel stood at his grave and didn't cry, just smiled. "You did good, Dad. The world's still here. We're still here. That's enough." Ryan built a life, got married, had kids, became a therapist helping veterans with PTSD, turned his trauma into purpose. The team scattered, but stayed in touch. Christmas cards, occasional reunions, the bond never broke. Hammer retired to his ranch, raised horses, died at 83 with a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a smile on his face. Wraith continued sniping until his eyes gave out, then became a gunsmith, made the finest rifles in America. Valkyrie started a security company, employed veterans, built an empire. Nomad disappeared into the intelligence community, became a ghost for real, occasionally sent postcards from places that didn't exist. And Rachel and Ethan, they taught. For 20 years, they trained operators, shaped minds, built warriors who were also human beings. When they finally retired, they did it together. Bought a cabin in Montana, lived quietly. Sometimes late at night, Rachel would wake from nightmares. The old memories, the scars that never fully healed. But Ethan was always there. And in the morning, the sun would rise. The world would keep turning. And Rachel Morrison, warrior, teacher, survivor, would face another day. Not as a weapon, as a woman who'd been broken and put herself back together. As someone who'd been to hell and walked back out. As proof that you could be forged in fire and still choose to be kind. That you could know how to kill and still choose to protect. That you could carry scars and still be whole. She lived to be 87, died peacefully, like her father, surrounded by family. Her last words were to Ethan, "We did good, didn't we?" And he smiled and said, "Yeah, Raven, we did good." They buried her at Arlington. The headstone read, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Morrison, call sign Raven, 1993 to 2080. Warrior, teacher, protector. She chose to be human. And that was her legacy. Not the mission she'd completed, not the enemies she'd defeated, not the wars she'd fought, but the choice she'd made every single day to be human, to protect humanity, to prove that even in a world of violence and betrayal and darkness, kindness still mattered, love still mattered, honor still mattered. And people like Rachel Morrison, broken and scarred and imperfect, could still make a difference, could still change the world. One student at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. That was the real story. Not the guns or the explosions or the dramatic rescues, but the quiet moments, the choices made in darkness, the decision to protect instead of destroy, to build instead of break, to love instead of hate. Rachel Morrison had been a weapon, but she became something more. She became proof that redemption was possible, that change was possible, that being broken didn't mean being destroyed. And that the strongest warriors weren't the ones who killed the most. They were the ones who saved the most, protected the most, loved the most. Rachel Morrison. Call sign Raven. Daughter, sister, wife, teacher, warrior, human, hero,